My wife, Allison, and I have been married for 8 years. We met in our senior year of college, where we dated from time to time, but our relationship was nothing special. We came together and then diverged, being faithful to each other when we were together. But when we separated, there was no exclusivity. Our relationship ended with both of us returning home and looking for work. I studied accounting and began working in the office of an international accounting firm in the largest city in our state. As part of my job, I took the CPA exams and took classes at a local community college. One day, as I was passing through the main building, I heard someone shout, John Adams, is that you?" I turned around, squinting at the sunlight streaming through the atrium. I saw someone from the crowd of people waving, but I couldn't see their faces. As the woman came closer, I realized it was Allison. She didn't stop until she pressed herself against me, wrapping her arms around my neck. Don't ask me what happened, but for the first time in our entire conversation, a spark jumped between us, and we kissed passionately so much that we didn't want to stop. Finally, I had to catch my breath and looked at Allison. "Wow, let's go get some coffee and catch up." Allison taught ancient Greek in college, which was her specialty. She moved here about 3 months ago and rented an apartment in the city. Surprisingly, she was only a 15-minute walk from my apartment. Our relationship in college was fun, but not deep. But within 6 months of graduating, Allison had changed. She was growing up, and I just wanted to spend time with her. That night we went out for dinner, then drinks, and I walked her home. She asked if I wanted to come over for a snack, and even though we had sex many times before, I said, "No, this is the start of our new relationship. Let's take it slow." She blushed and smiled, but didn't say anything. Slowly, lasted about a minute. I leaned in to kiss her softly when she grabbed me and kissed me passionately, whispering, "Fuck it slow. We're getting married in 6 months and we need to practice." She was wrong. By a month. We got married 7 months later. I don't think I've ever actually proposed to her. She started planning her wedding a week after we met, and I bought an engagement ring at the same time as my wedding rings. Sometimes things just work out on their own, and this was one of those times. We bought a house in a new area and moved there after our honeymoon. Life was wonderful. After about 3 years of marriage, I suggested to Allison that she stop taking the pills. She looked at me and said, "I've never taken a pill." My brain clicked, and I responded, "But that means we never use contraception. How come you didn't get pregnant?" Her look suggested that she had never thought about it. I quietly suggested that she go to the doctor to make sure. After several tests, it was confirmed that Allison was unable to have children. It was a very difficult time in our lives, but I loved her. When she suggested that I look for someone who could give me children, I told her that I married her through thick and thin, and that she should get used to the idea that I would not go anywhere. We discussed adoption, but decided we were destined to not have children and made peace with a childless life. The biggest change that being childless has brought is the change in our social circles. As soon as each couple started having children, we saw them less and less as they had other concerns. We made friends among older couples whose children were grown and either supporting themselves or moving away from home. Allison found a new circle of friends in college. Many of her faculty members were in their 40s and 50s, and we began going to dinners and sometimes house parties with them. Although their taste in music was a little different from Allison's and mine, we had a lot of fun at these parties. By our 8th anniversary of marriage, we had a whole new circle of friends. At one of the faculty parties, Allison introduced me to Liz, who had just been appointed head of the Ancient Languages Department. Liz was married to Tom. I talked to them a little and immediately realized that I liked Tom. He was friendly, but complained about the music they were playing. He was also an Oakland A's fan, which to me was a sign of quality. On the way home, Allison asked, "What do you think about Liz and Tom? I like her, and she suggested we go out to dinner with them next Friday. Would you mind?" "Sure," I confirmed. "Tom seems like a nice guy, and he doesn't like that old music everyone else is playing." "Deal. It'll be fun." The following Friday, we had a wonderful evening with Liz and Tom. Dinner, club, conversation and drinks flowing freely. After the club, Tom suggested we share a taxi to their house, have another drink, and then we could head home since it was only 20 minutes further. Liz walked into the house ahead of Allison, and Allison was ahead of me. I noticed an aquarium on the table, but there were no fish in it. Liz looked over her shoulder with what can best be described as a damaged grin and looked me straight in the eyes. With a smirk on her face, she asked, "Did the penny finally drop? How long did it take you?" It was clear that Allison was completely in the dark as she stopped and asked Liz and I in surprise, "What penny? What are you talking about?" I didn't respond directly to Allison, but instead reached out to Liz. "Yes, I understand. How long have you been leading this lifestyle?" I saw Allison's hand go to her mouth. Liz replied, "We started when the kids were little. At first, just 2 or 3 couples at a time. Enough to have a party at home without making too much noise. As the kids grew up, we started moving between different parties. Now we have a big group, all with children who are now grown up, so we can have big parties and move between houses without arousing suspicion from the nannies." Tom walked past me, and as Liz finished her statement, he shouted, "Come into the living room, the drinks cabinet is here. I'm guessing you'll be drinking what you've been drinking all night." I didn't look at Allison, but I knew she was shocked by the revelation. Therefore, my first fear that she had set me up was in vain. I went into the living room. Liz was already on my tail, and Allison was walking a few steps behind. I took my drink from Tom, but remained standing. I wanted to make sure I sat next to Allison when she sat down. Not because I thought Tom and Liz would try to pair us up, but because I wanted to be near her, so I could move the conversation away from the unpleasant topic and go home as quickly as possible. I had a feeling that Liz and Tom would be happy to have us as friends, like tonight, but if we spent too much time at their house or went to one of their parties, they would be more than happy to bring us into their lifestyle. Liz had other plans for the conversation. She began, "I think Allison is still getting over our little revelation. Don't worry, Allison. We have friends who don't do that kind of thing. We're open about our lifestyle and want everyone to know they can join in. Us. But we never push anyone. This lifestyle is not for everyone. In fact, it is not for 99% of couples. But if you want to try, you can join our parties. You just have to ask. You are, of course, welcome to come to the party to see how this happens without engaging in partner exchange. In fact, we have a party planned at this house tomorrow night. I can see from John's stance that he is afraid that we are about to try something. John, I assure you, neither Tom nor I will touch you or Allison." I took a long sip from my glass, then said, "Liz, Allison and I had a really good time tonight. I'd like to do it again, but I definitely don't want to be a part of that side of your life. I think Allison and I should go. I don't want to be rude, but I want to remember this evening as a really pleasant one, not an unpleasant one." Tom ended this part of the conversation by saying, "Very wise. Let's make this a regular event, but we will no longer invite you here on weekends when we have a party. FYI, there are 2 parties a month, so the party is happening at this house once every 6 or 7 months." He picked up the phone and said, "I'll order you a taxi. It should be here in about 5 minutes since the depot is right around the corner." I noticed that at this stage, Allison had not spoken a word since the conversation began in the kitchen. When I looked at her, her expression was unreadable. I knew the explosion was coming when we got home, and I just hoped it wouldn't be to try this lifestyle. Liz, Tom, and I continued to have a small conversation until the taxi arrived. Allison remained silent. The taxi ride was also silent, and when we arrived home, Allison rushed to the door while I was paying. I walked into the house to find Allison sitting in the living room with only the side light on. Her expression was pale. I stood leaning against the living room door, waiting to see what would happen next. She began in a quiet and timid voice. "Why did you reject the party proposal so harshly?" Was my great fear realized? I got straight to the point. When we were in college, we were never really exclusive because we were in and out almost every month. Our relationship was fun, but never really intimate or satisfying. When we moved here and met again, we immediately became an exclusive couple, and our relationship was full of love, intimacy, and was very satisfying. I'm afraid that if we enter into this lifestyle, we will go back to the way it was in college, and our relationship and marriage will dry out and die. I don't want this." She looked at me with sad eyes, saying, I understand. Let's go to bed. That night, we lay in each other's arms, lost in our thoughts. I hoped beyond hope that Allison didn't fall into this lifestyle because that would be the end for me. The next morning, I woke up early and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. About 10 minutes later, Allison came into the kitchen, smiled at me, and started making coffee. We both sat down at the table, and it was clear that neither of us knew where to start, but the silence was at least comfortable. Finally, Allison began, "When did you realize they were in an open marriage?" "I didn't know," I replied. "Well, at least until the moment I saw the empty aquarium." I looked at Liz, and her head began to nod in some kind of laughter. And then it dawned on me that this was not an aquarium, but a container for car keys at their party. Allison looked at me. "I don't understand." I smiled. My wife was very smart, but not in all things in the world. I explained, "They say that at these parties, couples put their car keys in a container. At the end of the night, the woman takes a set of keys out of the bowl. Whoever owns the car leaves with that woman. The idea is that the choice is random. No choice of partners. No need for mutual attraction, just random selection. I'm sure that's the point. All I know is that it's supposed to just be casual sex between a closed group of people." Allison sat in silence for a moment, clearly enjoying her coffee, before asking, "You won't have casual sex, right? You said last night that when we were dating and breaking up, you didn't really feel anything for me. But once we became exclusive, you just fell in love with me. I loved you from the beginning and could never understand why it kept falling apart. I thought diversity was good for us. I never fully understood. I think I still don't understand." Allison stood up and announced, "I'm going to take a shower." I watched her walk up the stairs and then went into the yard to cut the grass and do some cleaning. Around 1 o'clock, Allison called me for lunch. As soon as I sat down, I realized that she wanted to talk more. She began the conversation. "I've been thinking about what you said last night and this morning, and trying to put it into context with my own feelings. As you know, I've always loved you very much. I've never had a problem with sharing you because I always felt that you would come back to me. And in the end, I was right, because now we are married. Sharing you was an experience that expanded what we did. I never knew you didn't like it so much. I thought you liked it as much as I did. I don't know, but it really confused me. I need to understand that. Exclusivity for me has always been about children. It was necessary for their emotional development. Now that we can't have children, I wanted to see how I felt about pushing boundaries, but I didn't know how. When you and Liz started talking about the party, I had an idea. You noticed my strange reaction, but you didn't say anything, and then you stopped everything so quickly. I need to understand why you don't like sharing, and I need to know whether I do it or not. I need to see how it works for others and why you can't do it. I have to go to this party tonight. I've already talked to Liz, and we can come as uninterested guests. You take me?" My heart skipped a beat. I was shocked, disappointed, but most of all, I was scared. I was afraid that if we went, Allison would want to feel emotional, that just watching it wouldn't be enough for her. But I also knew that she wouldn't calm down until we went. I had one chance, and it was time to take it. "Allison, I want you to change your mind. I won't share with you. If we go to this party, I won't go with anyone else. But if you go with anyone else, whoever he is, that will end our marriage. Do you understand that? Even if we go, I will feel uncomfortable and unpleasant. You are leading me into the lion's den, and our marriage may suffer even if we come out alive. Please don't do this." Allison looked very sad, but said, "John, you know me. I need to understand this, and the only way to do this is to see it with my own eyes, for better or worse. Please come with me. We will not participate, and will leave a little before the key draw begins. I promise it will satisfy my curiosity." I was trapped. If we go and Allison even offers to take part in the prank, my love and our marriage will be ruined. If I refuse to go, she will feel like I am limiting her emotionally, and it will also be detrimental to our marriage. I took a deep breath. "Okay, we'll go, but remember, I'm going under pressure. I don't want to see what's going on there. I don't want to know these people, and I definitely don't want to be involved. Also remember that this will probably hurt my friendship with Liz and Tom. After I see them with other people, I won't be able to treat them with respect. Now you know my feelings. Shall we go? Allison kissed me and said, "Yes, I will not participate, and I promise that we will leave before the main part of the evening begins." After lunch, I went outside, ostensibly to finish some yard work, but really to think and plan. I had to drive. That much was obvious. I didn't want to drink alcohol because I needed to be able to leave quickly. The problem is that this meant we would have the car keys, and the car keys were the starting point of their game. I didn't know what time the giveaway would start, but I needed to make sure Allison was out of the house before it started. I had a feeling there would be a level of excitement in the raffle, and I had a feeling Liz would try to get Allison to add our keys, and if Allison was drinking and flirting, she might want to join in. I needed to avoid this. I knew my love for her wouldn't survive if she actually asked to join the party. Allison prepared steak, fries, onions, mushrooms, and fried tomato for dinner. This was definitely a filler dinner. I hoped it was just to get me to go. I was terribly nervous. Allison didn't know, but I knew. Our marriage was on the rocks. We finished dinner in relative silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Once we finished cleaning, Allison told me to get in the shower and she left my clothes on the bed. I showered and shaved before entering the bedroom. Allison sat at her dressing table applying her makeup. She was wearing a red set, more precisely the lower half of it. It wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that she wasn't wearing a bra. Allison has never gone bra-less, but it looked like she was going to do it today. I looked at the bed and saw that she had put my tuxedo down. I commented, "This is very solemn." She looked at me in the mirror and said, "I want every woman in the place to be jealous of my man." I smiled. "What will you wear?" She pointed to the closet door, and I saw her short red dress that she wore to formal events. She looked amazing in it, but it was low-cut. I asked, "Are you going to wear a bra underneath? I've never seen you go out without one." She shook her head. "It's a one-time thing. I need to feel a little slutty tonight. Liz said not to wear panties, but I couldn't do it, so I decided to go bra-less." Part of me was relieved. She intended this to be a one-time event. Let's hope this intention continues throughout the night. Also, at least she wore a thong, but with Allison's large breasts, she would have a hard time keeping it in that dress, especially if the evening got rowdy, so she always wore a bra. I drove the car very slowly towards Liz and Tom's house. I was hoping Allison would tell me to turn around, or if I drove slowly, we wouldn't get there at all. Of course, it didn't work, and we arrived at 8 o'clock. There were already 8 or 9 cars parked around the house, and the sounds of the party could be clearly heard outside. Allison jumped out of the car and ran to the door, showing an enthusiasm I hadn't seen in a long time. I felt only horror and could barely drag myself to the door. Liz opened the door as I slowly walked up the path. I heard her say to Allison, "You're here. I'm so glad. You'll enjoy meeting our company, and I really hope we make it a memorable evening." Allison looked at me as I walked up the step next to her and bit her lip nervously, then said, "We're just here to see. We plan to leave early. I don't think it's for me, but I need reassurance. John already knows this will be a problem for him. Let's just watch, chat, and have a good time." Liz stepped aside, and we entered the house. At that moment, 3 more cars arrived, and Liz looked outside. "Oh, good, everyone's here. I can't wait to introduce our potential new members." The feeling of dread in my stomach intensified upon hearing this. It was clear that Liz believed we were there to join in, and she wouldn't stop until we either threw the keys in the pile or left. I knew that my feelings of friendship would not survive the pressure she seemed about to put upon us. Allison headed into the living room, and Liz followed her with a shout. "Go to the kitchen. I want to make a grand entrance with you two when everyone is seated." Allison turned sharply into the kitchen, and I followed her. It was clear that Allison was nervous, so I approached her. We heard others enter the house, and Liz told them to go into the living room so she could introduce the new couple. I leaned down so my mouth was close to Allison's ear and whispered, "What does she mean by new couple? I hope you told her that we are only here because of your curiosity and have no intention of joining. Allison looked at me and tried to avoid eye contact. I told Liz that we were just here to watch and that you were very unhappy with the party and adamantly against participating. But she said that we would be so caught up in the power and passion and sexy women in the room that you would be throwing your keys into the fishbowl, like as soon as he appears, she said matter-of-factly. My response was a short grunt, followed by my standard flippant response. Fat chance. The living room door closed and we heard Liz talking to the group, but we couldn't make out what she was saying. 5 minutes later, Liz and Tom walked into the kitchen and Liz announced, "Are you ready for your grand entrance?" Liz extended her hand to Allison, who took it. Liz then turned around and half-pulled Allison along with her. I followed them and Tom followed me. As we walked into the living room, Liz said, "Meet Allison and John. They're here for the first time to see us work. Make them feel at home." I looked around the room. Including us, Liz and Tom, there were 14 couples in the room. I knew at least 4 couples. At least one spouse of 3 couples worked at the same company as me, and the 4th couple went to the same gym as Allison and me. I also recognized a prominent politician from our state senate, and the woman sitting on his lap was not his wife. The smell of betrayal hung in the room. It was neither pleasant nor sexy to me. The men were dressed in tuxedos, just like the one Allison had chosen for me. I realized that this should be the dress code for men. The women were dressed in revealing clothes that were too youthful for them. My first impression was lamb in sheep's clothing. I wanted to run out into the fresh air, but knew that this would not happen, since Liz was already leading Allison around the room, introducing her to other couples. Tom brought me a vodka and Coke, but I said, "No, thanks. Can I just have orange juice? I don't want to drink tonight." Tom looked at me. "A few drinks will help you relax, are you sure?" I just said, "Absolutely." He came back and brought me orange juice, then walked over to Allison and handed her a martini. I was sure it was a homemade drink and made a mental note to keep track of how much she drank. She could get really drunk if I wasn't careful, and that was never a good sign in college. The other thing I noticed was that all the women touched Allison's hand when they were introduced, and all the men stood up and hugged her in a way that was overtly sexual. It was definitely a persistent pressure. Then one of the women I knew from work named Cherry came up to me and kissed me on the lips. "Hi, John. Nice to see you here. I hope you have a good time. Let me introduce you to the company." With these words, Cherry took me by the arm and led me around the room, introducing me to everyone. Again, each woman stood up and gave me a long kiss, often pressing herself against me. All the men shook hands. My level of discomfort grew by the minute. None of this seemed sincere. Even Liz and Tom, who seemed like real friends yesterday, made me feel like Bambi surrounded by a pack of lions. They were here to eat, and Allison and I were the main course. Liz left Allison with Jennifer, who she knew from the gym, and left the room. In less than a minute, she returned with an aquarium and placed it on the table, which was placed in the center of the room. She then loudly announced, "Ladies, take out your partner's keys and get ready to throw them into the fish bowl." Everyone stood up, and the women took the keys out of their partner's pockets, then turned to the center of the room, holding the keys up. Liz walked up to Allison, who was standing a little stunned, took her hand and led her towards me. Liz then walked over to Tom, who was standing next to me, and took the keys out of his pocket, holding them up like the other women. Liz looked at Allison and egged her on. "Come on, Allison. Start the engine with these keys out." I felt Allison tense, then she replied, "No, we're only here as observers tonight. John isn't ready for this yet, and now I know that I am neither." You could see the disappointment on Liz's face, but she said, "Okay, ladies, start your engines." With these words, she went to the aquarium and threw Tom's keys into it. All the other women, except Allison, followed her. I squeezed Allison's hand and looked at her. She gave me a weak smile, but held my hand tightly. For the first time since we talked at lunchtime, I didn't have a knot in my stomach. Allison and I stayed another hour. We held hands while other couples switched partners and played. Many women lost their dresses, and most men were either left without trousers or without any clothes at all. It was Allison who walked up to Liz and said, "I'm sure this isn't for us. Thanks for letting us watch, but we'll leave now." We quietly left the house and returned home. The drive was complete silence, and when we arrived home, Allison rushed upstairs. She returned 15 minutes later, dressed in a robe. She asked, "What do you want to drink? I think we both need it." "Whiskey with ice for me, please. I need to clear my throat after all this smoke." Allison handed me the drink, then made herself a vodka and orange juice. When she sat down, the robe opened and she was naked. She looked into my eyes and calmly stated, "I looked at that room tonight and felt nothing. No arousal, no sexual interest. Exclusivity is the only answer for you and me. I really needed to see that to understand your thoughts. It was vital and I never want to see it again." I smiled, then pulled Allison as close to me as possible. I made sure that the robe opened so that I had full access to caress her breasts. That night we made love very passionately. We both had a lot of stress, and what we did was stress relief. The next morning we both woke up at about the same time. I asked Allison if she wanted breakfast, but she said, "No, we need to talk about last night and I want to do it here in bed." Now I understand why you didn't like sharing and why our relationship became stronger when it was just the two of us. She lay on my chest, and I suspect she could feel the knots in my muscles relax as she said that. She continued, "I'm sorry I put you through this, but I needed to see. What I saw was a group of vulgar people who didn't really want to be married, and I realized that the only thing I really want is to be married to you." The room didn't smell of power or passion. It smelled of corruption and infidelity. "You were right. I doubt we can date Tom and Liz again because I can never consider them a loving couple. I want to grow old with you, and I only need you." We lay in complete silence for over an hour, just holding each other close. We didn't have to make love, we didn't have to talk, and we didn't have to kiss. We were both thinking the same thing. We dodged a bullet, and our love and marriage will be stronger because we never want to try that again. Shortly after that night, a new couple moved into the house next to us. They were a year or two older than us and also childless. It seemed like it was their own choice, but it didn't matter to us. We quickly became friends, and they introduced us to other peers. As for Liz and Tom, their parties soon erupted into scandal. The problem started with an investigation in our local newspaper. The article was about a local senator who went to these parties with various women from his staff. The article named everyone who was at the parties. Liz and Tom were mentioned as the couple who organized the entire club. The scandal lasted for several weeks, and eventually the senator resigned. The disclosure put a lot of pressure on many families. I saw Cherry at work and she looked terrible. Her 2 children found out about the article and practically disowned their parents. It was also clear that Jennifer and her husband's marriage was coming to an end, and the article was the last straw. The last time I saw Jennifer at the gym, she was leaving with the contents of her locker in her bag. She told me the divorce would be amicable, but she was moving back to her home state. Liz and Tom's house was put up for sale and they disappeared from the area. No one knew where they went, and, sad to say, no one cared. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. Listening to the next one. Listening to the next one. Listening to the next one.